Hello everybody. We will start the endocrine system. Uh, First we'll talk about two different types of glands in the body, exocrine and endocrine. Then we'll start to talk about the endocrine glands. We'll talk about the properties of the endocrine system. Then we'll talk about the location of major endocrine glands in the body, where they're located. Then we'll talk about two important endocrine glands in the brain. One is called the hypothalamus and another is the pituitary gland. Hypothalamus is a part of the brain which is also considered as an endocrine gland. And you know, all of you know about the pituitary gland, which is called the master gland. So we'll talk about those two. Then we'll talk about the pituitary hormone, pituitary gland and the hormones of the pituitary gland. Then we'll talk about another gland located in the brain, that is the pineal gland and its function. Then we'll talk about thyroid, adrenal and few other glands. So what is the difference between the exocrine and endocrine glands? In your body, you have both exocrine and endocrine glands. Exocrine glands secrete the chemical into the ducts. So this is the gland, exocrine gland, and these are the cells inside the gland, okay? And you will see inside the gland tube-like structures. Those are called the ducts. And small ducts join to form the larger duct. And finally, the large duct that gets out from the gland, like this. So this is the duct or tube, and these are the cells, and these cells secrete the chemical into the duct, and the duct then releases the chemical to the outside, just outside of the gland. So it works locally, okay, just around the gland. In case of endocrine gland, this is an endocrine gland, okay. These are the cells produce hormones, and you have blood capillaries inside the gland, right? So this is a blood capillary, and what happens, the hormone is secreted into the blood capillary, into the blood, and that blood takes the hormone out. So blood uh, hormone is secreted into the blood, and blood takes the hormone to the outside of the gland. So just think that once the hormone enters into the blood will take it everywhere, okay, because blood circulates throughout the body. So the difference again, in case of exocrine glands have ducts or tubes inside, and the chemical is secreted directly into the ducts, and small ducts drain the chemical into the larger duct, and the larger duct takes the chemical to the outside. So the chemical is released just outside of the gland and acts locally just outside of the gland. In this case, in case of endocrine, since the hormone or chemical is released into the blood capillary, the blood takes it far from the gland. So the action could be far away from the gland. Okay, and the action will be generalized because the blood can take it to many organs and it can work on multiple organs. So far action and also more generalized. That means more widespread action. And this one is localized and near, just outside of the gland. Okay, so those are the main differences between the exocrine and endocrine. Now, example of exocrine glands: all the glands of your skin are exocrine glands. Skin glands, sweat gland, sebaceous gland, those are the glands of the skin. They are exocrine. Uh, Mammary gland, female breast, the secretion of milk is also exocrine. Okay, function, exocrine gland. Endocrine glands are located throughout the body. So we'll see, since we are going to talk about the endocrine glands, we'll see the important endocrine glands and their locations as well as their functions. Okay. So I mentioned all these in last slide. Now the major endocrine glands, if you start from the brain and go downwards, hypothalamus is a brain structure that is considered as an endocrine gland too, and hypothalamus controls the pituitary gland secretion from the pituitary gland. Okay, so hypothalamus is just above the pituitary gland. So this is the pituitary gland and this is the hypothalamus. So hypothalamus and this is the pituitary gland. Okay, so pituitary gland is controlled by the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus sends signal to the anterior and posterior pituitary. So pituitary has two lobes, anterior pituitary and posterior pituitary, and both are controlled by the hypothalamus. Okay, hypothalamus. Now pituitary is called the master gland. That means it is the boss of the other endocrine glands. So pituitary is the master gland. Why? Because it controls the other endocrine glands of your body. Okay. However, pituitary is controlled by hypothalamus. So this is the boss of the boss, right? So master is the pituitary and the master of pituitary is the hypothalamus. So those are two very important glands, right? And they are closely connected to each other. Then inside the brain you also have a tiny gland that is called the pineal gland. Pineal gland is important because it regulates the circadian rhythm. Regulates circadian rhythms. Day-night cycle. in your body you have day-night cycles, or sleep awakeness cycle, that is called circadian rhythm, and that is controlled by the pineal gland. Pineal gland also secretes a chemical that is called melatonin. Probably you have heard it. It's used. This chemical is used as sleeping medicine too, melatonin. Okay, so these are two important functions of the pineal gland. Then, if you go down uh, in front of the lower part of the neck, you have a thyroid gland, just in the lower part of the neck. And thyroid gland looks like this: two lobes connected by an isthmus. So this is thyroid gland, has two lobes and connected by that structure that is called isthmus. Okay. Thyroid gland produces the hormones, and those hormones are responsible for metabolism, and lowering calcium in the blood. Okay, so it lowers the blood calcium and it increases metabolism. Okay, those are two important functions of the thyroid gland. Then in the back of the thyroid gland, if this is the thyroid gland, and if you look in the back, not in the front, in the back dorsal surface, you'll see tiny glands, usually 4 to 8 in number. Okay, like small buttons. They are attached to the back of the thyroid, and those are parathyroid. So 4 to 8 small attached to the back of thyroid, attached to the back of the thyroid gland. How many? 4 to 8. So the number varies person to person. Parathyroid glands are very important because it increases the blood calcium. So the hormone of parathyroid glands increases the blood calcium. So you see that thyroid hormone lowers the blood calcium and parathyroid hormone increases the blood calcium. So by the action of these two, thyroid and parathyroid, your blood calcium concentration is regulated, and the calcium concentration in your blood must be maintained between 9 to 11 milligram per deciliter of blood. Okay, deciliter means 100 milliliter of blood, 9 to 11 milligram. Okay, then thymus. Thymus is located further below, in the upper part of your chest or thorax, located in the upper part of the thorax or chest, and thymus is responsible for immunity, defensive function of the body. Okay, so your lymphocytes get matured there. Lymphocytes, one type of white blood cells, get matured inside the thymus. So the lymphocytes will fight against the microorganisms or antigens. Okay, so next is the pancreas. Now, pancreas is a mixed type gland. Why it is called mixed type gland? Because it has both exocrine and endocrine parts. So not purely endocrine. Other glands are purely endocrine here, but pancreas is a mixed type gland located horizontally in your body. It has a head part, right, body and tail. However, this pancreas has two parts, as I mentioned. The endocrine part is called pancreatic islets or islets of Langerhans. So endocrine part is the pancreatic islets. Here you see pancreatic islets. Since we are talking about the endocrine glands, that's why you see here pancreatic islets, which is the endocrine part. Just know that it has exocrine part 2, exocrine gland part, and that is called acyni, pancreatic acyni. So pancreatic islets is the endocrine, pancreatic acyni is the exocrine. Now pancreatic islet produces two very important hormones, insulin, all of you know about it, right? Insulin and glucagon. Okay, insulin, uh, probably you know, most of you, that insulin is a hormone uh, that is responsible for lowering the blood sugar, right? So you know that insulin is to lower the blood sugar. That's why diabetic patients take the insulin, right? To lower the blood sugar. Very important, right? Glucagon does just opposite, increases the blood sugar. So you see, same gland, endocrine part of pancreas, produces two hormones. One lowers the blood sugar, insulin, and another, glucagon, increases the blood sugar. And by the action of these two, your blood sugar is maintained, right? So when you eat a lot of sugar or carbohydrates, the insulin is secreted more, right, to lower the blood sugar. When you are starving, you are not getting sugar from outside, your glucagon will be released more to increase the blood sugar. Exocrine part of pancreas or pancreatic acyni produces pancreatic juice. Pancreatic juice. It is a digestive enzyme that goes to the intestine and breaks the proteins, carbohydrates, fats. So that is pancreas. Now adrenal glands on the top of your kidneys. So if you see the kidney, on the top of the kidney you have like a crown of the kidney, that is the adrenal gland. So you have two adrenal glands because you have two kidneys, right? Adrenal glands. And adrenal gland has two parts. If I just see the adrenal gland here, the outer part is called the cortex, adrenal cortex, and inner part is called the medulla. Okay, and the cortex has three layers. If you see the cortex under the microscope, you'll see three layers, has three types of cells in it. So cortex has three layers and medulla is one. So these four work as 4 separate glands. So that's why we say adrenal gland, adrenal cortex is like 3 glands in one gland, okay, and medulla is another. So 4 glands in the adrenal gland. And 3 layers produce 3 different types of hormones, and medulla produces different types of chemicals. So we'll talk about that. Just know that that's the adrenal gland. Now if you want to know the important functions of the adrenal gland or adrenal hormones help in glucose metabolism, strong anti-inflammatory action, anti-inflammatory action. Adrenal hormones also regulate minerals, sodium, potassium in the blood, produces sex hormones. So a small amount of sex hormone is also produced by the adrenal gland. And the last one, adrenaline. Probably you have heard about this hormone. Adrenaline causes excitement in the body. So all these are the functions of the adrenal glands. So adrenal glands are very important. Okay, adrenal gland is a very important gland in the body. Okay, then the testes and ovaries. These are the gonads. Male gonads are testes and female gonads are ovaries. Okay, 2 testes in male and 2 testes ovaries in female. And gonads produce sex hormones, right? And that is the endocrine function, hormonal function. And gonads also produce sperm and ovum. But that is not the endocrine function, right? That's the reproductive function. But just know that sperm, testes produce sperm and ovaries produce ovum or egg. So they are needed to form new life, right? So that's the reproduction function. Okay, so in this slide I explained the functions, important functions of the glands and the locations. So that is very important. You all need to remember what I said from this slide. So here you see the locations again. In the brain you have hypothalamus, you have pituitary below the hypothalamus, and also you have pineal. It's not shown here. So those 3 are in the brain. Okay, then the front of the lower part of the neck you have the thyroid. Then you have the upper part of the chest, you remember I said thymus. Then on the top of the kidneys you have the adrenal glands, and horizontally in the abdomen you have the pancreas, has head, body, tail. Okay, and then you have the ovaries and testes. Those are the gonads, right? And here you see the pancreas is a mixed type gland, and this is the pancreatic islets which produces insulin and glucagon, those hormones. So this is the endocrine part, produces hormones. islets of Langerhans or pancreatic islets, and these are called acyni. Exocrine produces pancreatic juice for digestion. So those are the important glands. Now I told you that hypothalamus controls the pituitary, and hypothalamus is the boss of the pituitary and sitting just above the pituitary. So you see here, pituitary is this one and hypothalamus is here. So hypothalamus sends signal to the pituitary and uh, tells the pituitary to secrete the hormones. Now pituitary has two lobes. You remember I said anterior and posterior parts. So this is anterior, this is posterior. Anterior pituitary produces 6 hormones, and posterior pituitary releases 2 hormones. Okay, and how much hormone will be released, that is determined by the signal arrives from the hypothalamus. Okay, so what are those hormones? Anterior pituitary produces 6 hormones. One is called growth hormone or GH. Its name is telling you growth hormone helps in the growth of the body, and particularly its action is more on the bones, so helps to grow the bones and skeletal muscles. And you know that those two structures have to mainly grow the body. So growth hormone works on almost all the tissues of the body, but the action is more on the bones and the muscles. So now you see, growth hormone secretion during the growth of the body is very important. Normal amount of growth hormone secretion is very important to grow the body. Now if during the growth of the body, that means uh, before your puberty, when the body grows, uh, if the growth hormone secretion is more than normal, then what will happen? The person will grow very fast, and that is called giantism or gigantism. Same thing, okay? Gigantism or giantism. If growth hormone secretion is less than normal during the growth of your body, the person will not grow enough, and that is called dwarfism. Okay, and you see both type of people. Therefore, normal amount of growth hormone secretion is very important, right? So normal secretion of growth hormone is very important for the normal growth of the body. Okay. Uh, Now this is during the growth of the body. However, if your growth hormone secretion was normal during the growth of the body, but after your puberty, in your adulthood, if suddenly growth hormone secretion increases, then what will happen? The body will not grow further because the growth is completed, right? In that case, what will happen? The facial bones, the bones of your face and the finger bones, particularly facial and finger bones, they will get thicker. So facial and finger bones will get what? Uh, Thicker, will grow in width, and that is called, probably you so facial and finger bones will get thick. will not grow in length anymore because the growth is completed, but they will get thicker, and that is called acromegaly. Okay. So acromegaly is a condition when the growth hormone secretion occurs more after the growth of the body is completed, and the person will have thick facial bones, as well as you'll see the protruded mandible. Mandible is like pushed forward, and the fingers are thick, and that is called acromegaly. So those are some clinical conditions related to the growth hormone, abnormal secretion of growth hormone. Then uh, follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, they work on the gonads, testes and ovaries. Okay, they come from the pituitary and work on the testes and ovaries, and they help in the growth of the sperm and ovum. And also the luteinizing hormone, this one particularly helps in ovulation. Ovulation, that means the release of the egg. Okay, release of the egg. So growth of the sperm and ovum, and the release of the egg, which is called ovulation, that happens in girls, right? So these two hormones, follicle stimulating and luteinizing. So we got three hormones. Then we have three more from anterior-pituitary, right? Prolactin is a hormone, anterior-pituitary hormone, that works on the breast, female lactating breast. That means the mother, after the baby is born, plenty of prolactin is released from the anterior pituitary, and it goes to the mammary gland or female breast and help to produce milk. So production of milk. Of milk. Okay, and that is prolactin. Then another hormone that goes to the adrenal gland and works on the adrenal cortex. You remember, outer part of the adrenal gland is called the cortex. So that is called adrenocorticotropic hormone, ACTH. It works on the adrenal gland. We'll tell the adrenal gland to release the hormones. Okay. And then thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH, stimulates the thyroid gland. So those are 6 hormones: growth hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, and luteinizing hormone. Okay, both work on the testes and ovaries. Then you have prolactin, right? ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, and TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. So those are 6 anterior pituitary hormones. Okay, anterior pituitary hormones. Then you have 2 hormones, those are posterior pituitary. So 2 posterior pituitary hormones are what? Posterior pituitary. One is called oxytocin and another is called antidiuretic hormone, or ADH. So these are 2 posterior pituitary hormones. Oxytocin has 2 very important functions: uterine contraction, uterine contraction. During the childbirth, contraction of uterus occurs, right? And that uterine contraction is helped by oxytocin. So help it helps in childbirth or labor. Antidiuretic hormone, okay, decreases urine production. Urine production. Okay, so if more antidiuretic hormone is released from the posterior pituitary, the amount of urine will be less. Make sense? That's why it is called antidiuretic hormone. Prevents the production of urine. Now, there is a clinical condition that is called diabetes insipidus. Diabetes insipidus is one type of diabetes in which what happens, the insipidus, it is not diabetes mellitus, that is commonly known as diabetes and related to sugar and insulin. That is a different type of diabetes, but this is different diabetes insipidus. In this condition, the patient produces plenty of urine, urinates a lot. So the volume of urine increases, or urine production increases. That is called diabetes insipidus. Why that happens? You see, if posterior pituitary is damaged due to tumor, okay, then the ADH hormone will not be produced enough, right? Makes sense? So, you know, ADH does what? Reduces the production of urine. But if ADH is not released, then what will happen? The production of urine will increase. Okay, so the person will produce plenty of urine, will frequently go to urinate. So that is called diabetes insipidus. Okay, dehydration will occur. The person will lose the water from the body. Okay, so it's a serious clinical condition. You have to surgically remove the tumor. So those are two posterior pituitary hormones and their functions. Okay, just know that anterior pituitary that produces 6 hormones, and we already talked about those 6 hormones. Anterior pituitary is also called adenohypophysis, and posterior pituitary is also called neurohypophysis. Okay, so AA, anterior pituitary adenohypophysis, posterior pituitary neurohypophysis. Why? Because posterior pituitary is filled with neuron type cells. That's why called neurohypophysis. Hypophysis means it's another name of pituitary. So neuro, the neurons are here. Adeno means gland. So the anterior pituitary is filled with the gland type cells, glandular cells. Okay, so that's why this is adeno. Adeno means gland. Hypophysis means pituitary, another name of pituitary. Okay, and neurohypophysis, which is posterior pituitary, has neuron type cells. Okay, and 6 hormones, we already talked about those from anterior, and 2 hormones from posterior pituitary. Okay, so we talked about those hormones and their functions. We talked about gigantism or giantism, acromegaly, dwarfism. You see, this person is a giant person. This is normal sized people, and this is really very giant, right? So the problem of giantism or gigantism is that the people who got giantism, they usually their lifespan is short. Although they are big, but their lifespan is shorter than average people. Why is that? Because growth hormone works on all the organs, right? Especially on the bones and skeletal muscles, but also works on the other organs. And the function of those organs are not normal because of the size. Big size doesn't mean normal function. Okay, that is one thing. And another is, since growth hormone uh, also increases the production of sugar in the blood, uh, continuous insulin secretion occurs, and always the blood sugar remains high, and that is diabetes, right? Diabetes, and that will cause uh, the disease of the heart and kidneys and other organs. So the lifespan of giantism people is shorter than normal average people. Almost every giantism person gets diabetes mellitus. Okay. Okay, so we talked about acromegaly, hormone supplement. Okay, posterior pituitary, two hormones. Remember, oxytocin and antidiuretic hormone. Antidiuretic hormone is also called vasopressin. Why? Because it not only reduces the production of urine, it also causes the constriction of the artery, blood vessel. So this is the artery. So vasopressin, or ADH, when it was first isolated, was first found, scientists noticed that this hormone causes constriction of the blood vessel. That means increases the blood pressure. However, so they named it vasopressin, presses the blood vessel. Later, they found that this hormone has huge effect on the production of urine. It reduces the urine production. So that's why later it was named antidiuretic hormone. Okay, we talked about two important functions of the oxytocin: childbirth by uterine contraction, and another function is ejection of milk. I didn't mention this. So ejection of milk from the mammary gland or female breast. So two important functions: ejection of milk, and another is uterine contraction for childbirth. Uterine contraction. Okay. So production of milk is prolactin, anterior-pituitary hormone, and ejection of milk, two different things. Ejection of milk is helped by oxytocin. So the antidiuretic hormone works on the kidney tubules, and you see, uh, takes the water back into the body. So this is water. So from the kidney, it takes the water back into the body, into the blood here. So the volume of urine will be less. Okay, so it works on the kidney tubules, take the water back into the blood of the body. So blood volume will go up, water in the blood will go up, but the urine production will go down. Okay, so that is the antidiuretic hormone. Now if due to posterior pituitary tumor, the disease of the posterior pituitary, I already mentioned, if antidiuretic hormone is not released, then what will happen? The water will not be able to get back into the blood, will not be able to get back into the blood. So will get out as urine. So the volume of urine will increase and the urine will be diluted urine. Okay. The thyroid gland in front of the lower part of the neck, you have uh, the thyroid gland, and I mentioned before it has two lobes connected by an isthmus. The first slide I mentioned that, right? And the thyroid hormone I mentioned performs two important functions: metabolism, metabolic activity of the body. So that is one function, and another I mentioned, lowering the calcium in the blood. Calcium in the blood. Okay, so these are two important functions. Now, thyroid hormone produces three hormones: T3, T4, triiodothyronine, Tri3, and tetraiodothyronine. And iodine is necessary for the production of thyroid hormones. It's in the name. Iodo, triiodo means 3 iodine atom. Tetraiodo means 4 iodine atom is in these hormones. Okay, and these two hormones increase the metabolic activities of the body. So the metabolism is increased. And another hormone produced by thyroid, that is called calcitonin. This one lowers the blood calcium. Calcitonin lowers the blood calcium. Okay, now you can think what can happen in hyperthyroidism, a clinical condition probably some of you have heard. Hyper means more, thyroidism, hyperfunction of thyroid gland. So what can happen if the thyroid gland functions more than normal? Then T3 and T4 will be released more, right? Will be produced more. Metabolism of the body will be high. So in hyperthyroidism, we see increased metabolism in the body. That makes sense. Okay. Now, when the metabolism in your body increases, you all know that what happens. For example, when you do exercise, metabolism increases, right? So what are the changes you see in the body? Heart rate goes up, right? So palpitation or increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, okay, increased fat burn. More metabolism means more utilization of stored fat from the body. So the person will get what? Skinny. And loss of body weight, weight loss. The person will be skinny and the body weight uh, uh, will be less, right? Uh, Sleeplessness. The person will have less sleep. And easily uh, irritated. The person will get cranky easily, and those are the signs of hyperthyroidism. Okay, and hypothyroidism, if the thyroid gland works less than normal, that is called hypothyroidism. In this case, also in hyperthyroidism, body will be warm. So if you touch, because when metabolism increases, heat is produced, right? So if you touch the skin, the body is always warmer than normal person. But in hypothyroidism, opposite, cold body, chill. Okay, body temperature is low, blood pressure is low, heart rate is low. Okay, so those are the things you will see happen in hypothyroidism. Now I told you that iodine, that mineral, is essential for the production of T3 and T4. T3 is called triiodothyronine. So 3 iodine atoms in it. T4 tetraiodothyronine. So 4 iodine. So iodine is necessary for the synthesis of T3 and T4, right? So if someone's body has lack of iodine, then that will cause hypothyroidism. Calcitonin, another thyroid hormone, you remember I said lowers the calcium in the blood. So if someone's blood calcium increases, then thyroid gland will release calcitonin to lower the blood calcium. Okay, and that condition is called hypercalcemia. The calcium in the blood is high. You remember I said that the calcium must be between 9 to 11 milligram per deciliter of blood. I mentioned it before. So if the concentration of calcium in the blood is more than 11, that is hypercalcemia. Okay, in that case the thyroid gland will release calcitonin to lower the blood calcium, and calcitonin uh, works on the bones and kidneys to lower the calcium. Okay. So inside the thyroid gland you will see many follicles. So from outside you won't see clearly. What happens if I cut the thyroid like this and see inside, I'll see first, if I see inside the thyroid gland, I'll see many finger like structures like this. These are called the follicles. Okay, so many follicles inside the thyroid gland. So now if I make a slice and see under the microscope, I'll see the follicles like this, round, right? So this is what you see here. So these are the follicles. Okay, and in the wall of the follicle you have the cells. These are called follicular cells. Okay, follicular cells, and these cells secrete help to produce T3 and T4. And in between the follicles you have another type of cells. These are called parafollicular cells. You see here, they didn't show here, parafollicular cells, and they secrete calcitonin. Okay, now inside the lumen of the follicle you have that special type of protein that is called colloidal protein, and iodine binds with this protein to form T3 and T4. Okay, so that's why iodine is important. Okay, so let's stop here. So in next class we'll finish the rest of the PowerPoints, and you need to know these things in your lecture.